Welcome to Invest Well, Be Well, a podcast for wiser investing and stronger living. I'm Rusty Vanneman, longtime investment professional, and I'm joined each week by my co-host, Robin Murray.
Thanks, Rusty. I'm a storyteller and journalist, and I am so excited to explore the ideas, insights, and people shaping the intersection of performance and purpose.
This podcast is for thoughtful investors and driven professionals who want to grow in their portfolios and in their personal lives.
We'll talk long-term investing, behavioral finance, personal development, and what it takes to live and work with intention.
So let's get started. Let's invest well and be well together.
This podcast is brought to you by Main Management LLC. Since 2002, Main has been recognized as an ETF strategist that combines an institutional process with the personalized service of a boutique firm. Our guest today is Chris Riggio. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at LegitScript, and that was a pretty cool interview. I liked it.
It was. I've been wanting Chris on the podcast for some time. He's so full of energy. He's an enthusiastic person. I've had the privilege of knowing him for over a decade now, and I'd consider him a great friend. He's a remarkable athlete. He's also truly one of the most energetic and fun people to be around. But you know, he's not on here just because of all that. He is a seasoned Fintech executive, and he has over 25 years of experience driving growth and building teams across various financial services firms. And as you mentioned, he's currently the Chief Revenue Officer at LegitScript, where he leads sales, marketing, account management, and customer success. And again, he just has a track record of building teams. And before LegitScript, this included senior leadership roles as firms such as ISS Market Intelligence, Confluence, and again, consistently helping grow teams. And a collaboration has always been a big theme everywhere he's gone. But what I admire most about Chris is how he lives his values, and he has some really great nuggets in this interview. Whether he's leading in a boardroom, he's hiking a mountain trail, playing soccer, he always brings the same balance, energy, and focus on growth to everything that he does. What were some of your key takeaways?
So yeah, I think it was super interesting to hear about his experience. You said he's been a leader across industries. So just interesting to hear how some of those experiences cross over and what he's taken from it. He talks about AI and the future of some of those tools that advisors can use to enhance their job, not take their job, as he said, which was kind of cool. I also thought it was really interesting to hear about his recovery routines. So an hour of recovery a day he talked about. And my favorite thing he said, I think, was how he treats his calendar as a scorecard. So when he's balancing his priorities, he's sort of leaning into that discipline that he obviously has as a strength and thinking about, okay, I'm going to use that to make sure that I balance all of those things in my life and make sure that everything is on my calendar, time with my family, time outdoors, work time, all of that. I like that approach.
You're right. So you hit some great points. I think he's a leader. So he gave great techniques for, managing teams and whatnot. And you did leave me one thing, which I thought was an awesome takeaway. I swore you were going to mention it first, but this whole concept of misogis. If I get that right. And he really talks about how he approaches this concept of misogis. And he's got 4 different ones. And for him, he has to do each of them every year. So all 4 of them each year. Thought that was a great tip.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a listen. Well, Chris, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you. Welcome to Invest Well, Be Well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, Chris, I am definitely excited to have you on the podcast. I think it's probably been years I really wanted you on, and it's finally happening. And as you might know, is our very first question, some people think is the hardest, and that is, we need a walk-up song to set the tone for this interview. What is your walk-up song?
Yeah, no, one, I love the question, right? And after listening to some of the older podcasts that you did, especially Skylar's last week, it's interesting. If you remember, he talked about a walk up and a walk out song.
Yeah.
Well, I have a new one for you, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's a warm up song, right? And so why I tell you that, and again, why it was relevant is I have an 11-year-old son who's playing competitive soccer now. And, the walk-up song is very much like a baseball thing, right? Yeah. That energy. And nowadays, every sport has these kind of walk-up, warm-up songs. And so in soccer, what they do before the games is they build a playlist of these songs that are really like energized. And so I kind of helped create those because of just my own walk-up song. And so probably my favorite that I'll give you is Seven Army Nation by White Stripes. Lyrically, doesn't motivate you as much as the beat does. It's one of those beats that, I was looking at the previous walk-up songs we've had, and I said, that's a missing one, that walk-up song that I really like, kind of really pumps me up. So I would use that one from White Stripes.
I think in all these years, I think we've had a Jack White song, but I can't recall a White Stripes song. Yeah, that White Stripes song, that album is one of my favorite rock albums too.
Indie rock. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the indie rock / alternative grunge. I don't know. Maybe that's dating me.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Chris, we want to talk about you and your background. You've spent more than 25 years in fintech and financial services. Tell us what first drew you into this industry and what keeps you energized about it today.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how 25 years have kind of flown by, right? If I think back and kind of remember early on, I just felt like I always thought banking was the kind of the safe career bet. I had graduated with a degree in economics and a minor in finance, and not to kind of date myself, but I had interned my junior and senior year for Chemical Bank, if you recall, owned by JP Morgan in New York City. So as a young kind of student, that was kind of really the start of being in like the financial services kind of sector. And then as I graduated, that was the .com era, right? And so I had done a little bit of a pivot from financial services into kind of software sales. And that's kind of really where my career started, where I got into financial services, right? Supporting asset managers and wealth management companies. And so that's really where it really took me. And I think what energizes me is the ability to have that constant kind of interaction with people, whether it be clients or just me building teams. And so that's what really energizes me when I think about kind of my career path in financial services.
So Chris, you spent all these years in the industry. You've developed a reputation in fintech and financial services, but you started a new place recently. Tell us more about your new gig.
Yeah, super exciting. I had the opportunity to start a new role this year as Chief Revenue Officer, like you said. So I kind of oversee the go-to-market organization for LegitScript. And, LegitScript's got a great background, great profile. They've been in business for the last 15 years, privately held. And, ultimately they're looked at as a global leader in risk management and compliance solutions. And so we're servicing some of the largest institutions, marketplaces, card brands, and payment ecosystem companies in the world. And so we're based out of Portland, Oregon, and we're backed by TJC and PSG. So we got, a passionate group of 250 kind of subject matter experts that are really trying to make the internet a very safe and more transparent ecosystem for consumers, merchants, and institutions. So yeah, really exciting.
Nice.
So when you look back on your career, what do you think are some of those common threads across your senior leadership roles, which have been varied? What's the through line in your career?
Yeah, I think the common thread throughout my career has been kind of building and like developing strong, accountable, customer-focused teams. I've done that my entire career. And I've been fortunate to have great mentors who've taught me kind of really the power of clarity and empowerment. So no matter the role that I had or the company that I worked at, I feel success has always been like giving people a purpose and like the freedom to deliver on it, which is important. So for me, there's like nothing more rewarding than seeing some of my former colleagues that I've worked with in leadership roles. And so being able to see some of them that have developed now into senior executives or CRO or CCO roles, there's nothing better than that. And so super gratifying to see that.
Cool. I want to follow up with a couple questions on some of the things you just talked about. So talking about teams, and you're a team player and a team builder, you're talking about accountable teams. So first of all, you're a great believer in collaboration. So what are some of the ways that you have successfully fostered cross-functional collaboration, particularly when silos start to form?
Yeah, that's another great question, and actually so relevant. So I'm at a company, LegitScript right now, and in the beginning of the year, this was one of their top initiatives, right? Which is how do we address cross-functional collaboration? And so actually what we did was we created a senior leadership team, right? And that senior leadership team had this accountability. And so when I think about my team, it's really all about transparency. And so silos typically disappear when everyone sees the same results or the scoreboard, right? So when you think about cross-functional kind of collaboration, it starts with having that result-driven scoreboard, fully transparent, right? And so I make sure my teams have a shared mission and goals, not just for the departments, but for the whole company. And so I think really like when people know how their work connects to the bigger win and to each other, collaboration becomes like natural. It's not forced, right? And so I'm a big believer of looking at cross-functional alignment as the connective tissue that ties the organization typically from reactive to kind of growth mode.
Yeah. All right. So the other question I had to follow up on was on accountability. And you might have addressed this to some extent, particularly with the transparency part. But how do you build a culture where accountability is embraced rather than feared?
Yeah, no, I live and breathe by accountability. My teams in the past know it. But I think, I look at accountability. It's not punishment. It's ownership, right? And I focus on building a culture where people feel trusted to make decisions and actually feel supported when things are not going as planned. And so when leaders model accountability with either transparency or humility, it becomes something that the organization should value and not really avoid.
So many of our listeners are financial advisors, investment professionals who also lead teams as you do. What would you say what leadership practice has been most transferable across different industries?
And Rusty kind of knows this, some of my closest friends are financial advisors and investment professionals. My career has led me down a path of these clients that become my friends. And so kind of hitting on what I've stated before, I think I would say communication and transparency, right? And so whether you're leading, advisors or in my case, like an enterprise sales team, clarity wins all out, right? And so people perform their best when they know what's expected, why it matters, how success is measured, and ultimately how they're incented, right? And so I think constant communication, coaching is really important for sure, and visibility will absolutely help inspire teams.
You've also worked at firms that provide market intelligence to investors and asset managers. From your perspective, how critical is unique insight and consistent high-quality information when you're talking about successful investing and also decision-making in general?
Yeah, no, for a very long time, I've worked at companies where our value prop was kind of market intelligence, actionable intelligence, and the end consumer was someone in wealth management, an advisor, investment professional. So I believe that data is a differentiator for advisors to do their business. So I believe it's a big portion of that. Decisions are only as good as the data behind it, right? And so making sure you have that unique insight, grounded in accuracy and not noise, separates great investors from the average ones, right? And so building that trust, drives conviction. And so being able to combine the actionable intelligence, whether it's through software or data that you actually have as a firm, with the subject matter expertise of these advisors. They have experience, and SME experience will help advisors differentiate and provide that kind of personalized touch to making really good decisions for their clients.
This episode of Invest Well Be Well is brought to you by Main Management LLC, a pioneer in actively managed ETFs since 2002. Main Management starts with a clear fiduciary focus, delivering the transparency and personal attention you'd expect from a boutique firm. They provide financial advisors with solutions, not products. Main also believes investors should keep more of what they earn, emphasizing net of fee after-tax performance to help clients retain more of their returns. I've known Main Management for years. I've met thousands of managers over the course of my career, and one quality I really value: they invest alongside their clients. they eat their own cooking. Over 10% of the assets they manage are their own partner assets. And more than half of the firm are partners themselves. That says a lot. To learn more about Main's strategies, including buy right hedged equity, U.S. sector rotation, thematic innovation, and all asset models, please visit their website at mainmgt.com. All right, I want to go big picture here. So given your background and your experience, I have to ask, how do you see the fintech industry continuing to shape the investment landscape, particularly for advisors trying to deliver better outcomes for clients?
Yeah. So because I've worked at fintechs really supporting advisors almost all of my career, it could be very overwhelming for advisors because there's so much out there from a data and technology perspective, right? And so I think fintech firms are moving super fast and advisors have more than they could choose from, right? And so I think the advisors that embrace technology and more importantly, kind of AI to enhance their job, not to take their job, but to enhance their job, whether it be transparency, efficiency, personalization, will absolutely help them build trust with their customers, but ultimately outperform what they're trying to accomplish. So the tools are changing, but the mission stays the same, right? Serve the client's best interests.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Of course, one of our themes for our podcast is stronger living. And beyond your professional work, you are super active. I know you do a lot of different things. You play soccer, you're an ultra hiker, and as we know, you do hike some of the most beautiful and dangerous trails in the world. How do you think some of these activities help fuel your leadership and decision-making?
The endurance sports absolutely aligns and teaches you the same lessons that leadership does, right? Like things like discipline and focus, preparation, resilience. So, you take a 30-mile hike that you and I have done in the past, right? What do? We learn to stay present, right? We prepare for it. We understand to push through discomfort and kind of find calm in the chaos, right? That's what we do. So I think it's exactly what is required to lead in good times and bad, right? And so being prepared for the uncertainty, these are all life lessons. And, I always think about the time that you and I were in the Nepali coast and we had a former colleague. It was a long hike. It was super hot. We had a former colleague who wasn't doing well, actually on the side of a mountain, dehydrated. He was a big man, right? And in that time, what did we do, right? We focused and we took him 1.5 miles down, right? Because he couldn't walk. And you and I led. That's a leadership role. We led him. We were focused. We were determined. And so I look at what I see on the mountain and what I see in my endurance as life lessons to how I apply it in the boardroom.
Well said. You're right. And that was a very large man, a very large fit man, but a very large man indeed.
That is right. Yeah, he was a big one.
So when you talk about some of those endurance feats that you undertake, what practices do you rely on for recovery? And that's whether it's physical, mental, or emotional as well.
Yeah. I'm now 51. At that age of 40, I started really thinking about kind of longevity and, balance and wellness and recovery were really a big thing for me. And so, I know I've shared stories with Rusty on this before, but this may sound a little obsessive to some, but I probably put in about an hour of recovery a day. That's outside of, that's like post-workout, right? And so from a 10-minute stretch to a 20-minute infrared sauna to a 30-minute compression therapy, for me, as I get older, I know how important that is. And so those are things I take in consideration to other things in my life because it actually helps me physically and mentally. I even think around sleep, right? As you get older, sleep gets a little bit harder for us. And being able to remove yourself from the kind of the digital world and kind of just read a book for 15, 20 minutes before you go to bed. These are things that I didn't do as a young chap. And now as I get older, that level of recovery, both physically and mentally, has kind of helped me really kind of energize my body as I think about, what the second act of my life will be.
Hey, on these points that Chris just made, I must admit, Chris has cost me a fair amount of money on some recovery tools that I had purchased on recommendation. So, but I do swear by those compression leggings, though. Those things are awesome.
The best. Yeah. Love it.
All right. Here's another one for you. How do you maintain your energy and focus while you're balancing some of these very demanding professional responsibilities along with your personal life?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We're all active, and for me, I'm on the road quite a bit, and so for me, and most people know, my wife knows as well. I'm very much a routine guy, right? And so I kind of treat my calendar like a scorecard, right? And so what's on it reflects the values and keeps me balanced. And I'll give you an example. So like when I think about, I make sure there's time for work and fitness and friends, family, recovery, travel. And so when I think about that balance, and when I think about like prioritizing the right things, consistency, balance isn't a myth. It's a byproduct of me being disciplined in kind of my routine.
I love that answer. Speaking of words of wisdom, and just given your energy levels and given the fact that you've accomplished so much and you're still accomplishing so much, if you could give one piece of advice to young professionals about sustaining a career for the long run, what would it be?
Yeah, and I do this for some of the young folks that are getting, coming out of college from my alma mater. And I tell them all the time, play the long game, right? For the most part, like understand that grit will lead to your success, and don't be in a rush. Like learn to kind of fail early. When I think about some of the folks that I've looked up to, very successful people that get on stage and talk about their successes, they talk about when you're young, coming out of school, and you're in your early 20s, like learn to fail, learn to experiment, right? Those are the ways where you're going to find what you want to do potentially in life. And the 30s and the 40s really is when you start developing a path in your career. And so I think everything else will fall into shape, but, play the long game. Don't be in a rush, right? A lot of the young kids out there now are rushing for advancement, rushing for money. They see what's out there in social media and they think they can get it so quickly. And that's just not the norm. So learn to understand what hard work and grit will do, but play the long game because that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, that's good. So you're an enthusiastic guy, but looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of fintech and financial services?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that I'm enthusiastic for sure. I've been really kind of leaning into artificial intelligence. In fact, our company has invested in kind of how our leaders can embrace this. And I've gone to a number of conferences where it's really the main topic. And so it's absolutely an area that I think most people need to lead into. And I think what excites me, it excites me because of where agentic AI will take everybody personally and professionally. And it's not about necessarily scaring people about it will take away, but it's about how it'll make us so much more efficient. And so I think, agentic AI will absolutely change the way we invest and service the industry. I think agentic systems will help us proactively analyze like life events and offer guidance and product suggestions and risk alerts. And so that level of technology will only amplify a wealth manager, investment professional, and give them the upper hand, the differentiation, so that they can focus on the person, right? And the communication and the connection with that client.
You've also talked about making every moment count. So what does living life to the fullest look like for you?
Yeah, no, for me, and for those who know me close, I love taking advantage of these life experiences. I get to share a number of life experiences with Rusty at least once a year. And so I don't know if you know what a Misogi is. Misogi is a kind of a year-defining event, right? And it's kind of a ancient Japanese kind of tradition, right? And I would say almost a decade ago, I kind of looked into that and said, I love those events. It's kind of like bucket list events. Well, so I came up with this concept a long time ago that I believe that every person should have 4 mini Misogis, right? And I broke them up into categories so I can look at it in a year. And so they are a historic misogi, an outdoor misogi, a philanthropic misogi, and an exotic misogi. And what I talk about that is like, I'll take historic as an example. I think everyone should go to a museum or do something historic, whether it be in your own country or outside, and experience it. That could be going to a presidential library. It could be going to a museum, or like going to see Gettysburg for the weekend, right? That's one event. Doesn't have to be really that costly, but it's an event you can go with your family or individual. The O for outdoors are like these hikes that we do, whether it's going, hiking kind of, Half Dome or Mount Whitney or the Angel's Landing, which we did in Utah. It's doing that kind of event. Philanthropic is, we build houses for the less fortunate. We do Feeding America. You could do small or large events. And then the exotic is like going away with your family, right? I was just in Korea or Japan with my family. And so I think that imagine doing 4 mini misogis like that a year for the next 30 years of your life, right? When I look back at like living my fullest life, taking those events that I've shared with friends and family are really what matters for me.
I love that idea. Chris, so our podcast, of course, is called Invest Well, Be Well. So to kind of summarize this all up, what does that phrase mean to you personally?
Yeah, no, I said in the beginning, I think investing for me is the long game, just like life. And so when I think about investing, when I think about life, that's why I love the podcast and listening to both sides of what you bring. It's about having kind of a plan and being thoughtful. It means investing in what endures, right? So when I think about relationships and health and integrity and letting those investments pay dividends in every part of your life, as simple as it sounds, being well and doing well aren't kind of separate pursuits. It's the same game.
Right on.
Nice. Good note to end on. Well, Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a great conversation. Before we let you go, where can our listeners follow your work and continue learning from you?
Yeah, one, love the podcast. And so thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. I enjoyed my time here. I think I'm most active on LinkedIn. So happy, to share thoughts. I typically bring things, whether it be relevant on my company or kind of the leadership style that I have. So LinkedIn is definitely a good home for me.
Great.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for making time for this. I know you just came back from an extensive overseas trip, but I'm glad you were able to be on the podcast. I look forward to being on the trail with you again. I also look forward, hopefully when I have some money in my bank account, for some more recovery tools.
Yes. Absolutely. Thanks, Rusty. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening to Invest Well, Be Well. Let us know what you think. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe. This podcast is hosted by Rusty Vanneman and Robin Murray and produced by Garrett Crosby.
If you have feedback, guest suggestions, or just want to connect, please visit my website, rustysbridge.com, or email me directly at rusty@rustysbridge.com. Until next time, invest well and be well. This episode of Invest Well, Be Well is brought to you by Bonrian Capital, led by my friend and colleague of nearly 10 years, Shana Sissel. Shana was named a top 20 wealth tech CEO in 2025, and it's no surprise. She's passionate, does the work, and knows asset managers, portfolio allocations, and alternatives like few others in the business. She's authentic, tough, and deeply cares about all her stakeholders, the kind of character you'd expect from the daughter of a police officer. If you want an investment manager who combines deep due diligence with innovative solutions and alternative investments, please check out Bonrian Capital at bonriancapital.com. This episode of Invest Well, Be Well is brought to you by Bonrian Capital, led by my friend and colleague of nearly 10 years, Shana Sissel. Shana was named a top 20 wealth tech CEO in 2025, and it's no surprise. She's passionate, does the work, and knows asset managers, portfolio allocations, and alternatives like few others in the business. She's authentic, tough, and deeply cares about all her stakeholders, the kind of character you'd expect from the daughter of a police officer. If you want an investment manager who combines deep due diligence with innovative solutions and alternative investments, please check out Bonrian Capital at bonriancapital.com.